At just 20 years old, Rory Tooley has already made a name for himself as one of the top freestyle pilots in the world. Starting his journey in RC at the young age of 5, Rory's love for aerobatics quickly became evident, driving him to hone his craft both in the air and on the simulator. Representing an impressive roster of sponsors, including Extreme Flight and Powerbox, Rory has been part of premier events like the SXFC, Nall, Western Park, and the Tucson aerobatic suite. In this episode, Rory shares his journey from growing up immersed in the RC world thanks to his father's influence, to diving into freestyle aerobatics and designing custom planes for simulators. We dive into his approach to creating routines, his insights on the difference in flying styles across the countries, and the unique challenges of flying in different conditions. Rory also talks about his setup and shares tips for getting sponsorships. If you're a fan of RC aerobatics, you will not want to miss this conversation. Hey Rory, how are you doing?
Hey, how's it going? I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Good, great. It's great to have you here. I've been wanting to have this interview for a while. I think you are not only a great pilot, but also it's very clear that you have a lot of passion for RC and for the hobby, and you are very
For sure,
active
yeah.
in events, in simulator, in Facebook, in YouTube, and yeah, it's nice to see.
Trying my best to keep active and just loving the hobby.
Cool. So why don't we get started with your story of how you got into RC?
Yeah, for sure. I got into the hobby through my dad. He's been doing it most of his life from his dad also. He started with racing cars, RC cars, and then moved on to planes and had his own model shop in the UK. And then I got into the hobby straight away with planes and then instantly just loved it on the simulator all the time, trying to improve and went from there.
How old are you right now?
I'm 20 now,
20. And you got started when you were how old?
5 or 6 years old.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
So it's been like a pretty much a thing most of your life then.
Oh yeah, my whole life been interested in the hobby.
Were you into aerobatics pretty early on, or did you do other types of like flying initially?
It was pretty much what I was interested in straight away. Just loved seeing the planes do all the cool tricks. I wanted to learn how to do that myself.
Yeah, that's kind of the same for me. I think from the beginning it's like, oh, if it flies, let's see if we can go invert and let's see if we can roll and we can
Yeah.
loop and we can do some like crazy things. It's fun. And you are in the UK, right?
Yes.
What's the airplane RC scene over there? Is there a lot of people flying, a lot of clubs?
It's not very big here, especially compared to like in the US and many other countries. We have a few events per year, which obviously Western Park is the biggest one. Other than that, there's probably one more event. Not so many people flying 3D. It's just a small community, really. Nothing compared to how it is in other countries.
And I think you guys have also some restrictions over there, right? I remember a long time ago you mentioning having to drive pretty far because of some noise restrictions and things like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, we have lots of noise restrictions here, so most of the people will be running silencers like canisters or tune pipes, and we have to drive an hour and a half to a field to fly stock mufflers.
I see. Um, I guess that you end up kind of moving around Europe here and there through the year for some events.
Yeah, we do obviously lots of events in Europe and then around the world also, just trying to keep keep active in events and competitions.
Yeah. So this past year, I feel like you've been pretty all over the place, right? Pretty busy
It's the
with
busiest year, yeah, for
RC
sure.
events.
Yeah.
I think I remember seeing you. I think it was it last year the
Yes,
Israel Freestyle
2023.
event, and then this year we met at Jonal.
Yeah.
Was that
And
your
then we
first
also
time at Jonal?
Jono, yeah, that was my first time at Jono and first time in the US.
How was your Jonal experience?
That is incredible to see an event so big and everyone being so friendly and welcoming. It was amazing to see.
Have you seen anything close to that in Europe? I know that they have over there the, what is it, like the Pro Wing or the Jet Power. They're like fairly large events, but
They are big events, and of course we have Western Park here, but it's very different style to Joe Knoll because Western Park, you'll get 1 to 2 flights per day because it's more like an air show style, so it's lots of who flies when and things like that, unlike Joe Knoll where you fly all day, every day.
yeah, Weston Park seems to be, at least from my impression looking at some videos, it seems to be like an invitation only event, right? Like they invite certain pilots.
So you register, they put a registration open, it actually opened about 2 weeks ago, and then
Hmm.
you'll get a message back saying if you've made the cut or not.
And I guess that it's set up as a kind of a demo event, kind of
Yeah, yeah. So you have
for the audience.
so you have the vendors. We call them traders. So they'll get some slots for their pilots and their products. Then the rest of them will be international pilots and anyone else who makes the cut for a slot. Really.
Cool. And then I know you went to Spain, to the
Yes,
Spanish
SXFC.
Extreme Flight Championships. Yep.
That
How
was
was
an
that? I know
amazing
there was a
time.
lot of really good pilots there.
Yeah, it was an incredible week. I mean, the same thing there. We could fly all the time, even after the competition, and then like before the competition practicing, we could fly from the morning until really late at night. It was just awesome to have fun flying non-stop, and then the competition was incredible as well. I always love competing against some of the best in the world and Europe. It's awesome. It really, really pushes you to improve.
Was that the typical like 4 minute freestyle with the music
Yeah,
format?
yeah, the normal style of freestyle, 4 minutes, flown to the music, the IMAC freestyle judging criteria.
What's your approach to creating a new freestyle routine? Do you like try to do a lot of the work in the simulator first, and then once you have idea, you bring it to the real plane, or what's your approach?
Yeah, so I start off all in the simulator, try and get a baseline of a routine, all on the simulator, fully remembered in my head before I go out to the field and try it. I'll usually start with finding music, which would take quite a few weeks or even months, and then I put it together, and then I'll usually start making the flight once I have the music together, and then adjust the music where it needs to be adjusted after I start making the flight. And then once I've got it in the simulator, we'll then go to the field, and usually the music will need to be sped up or slowed down because it's obviously very different airspeed to the simulator.
Have you
Yeah,
ever
that's.
done any like IMAC or pattern type competition?
I haven't done IMAC, but I did F3P indoors for quite
Hmm.
some years when I was younger.
What do you like more? Sounds like you're more on the freestyle camp these days.
Yeah, I'm a freestyle guy, but I definitely say that it really helps you doing some sort of precision sequence flying. It helps learn like fly box and precision and use like just the use of flight area especially, and just the precision in the landing the snaps and keeping your lines. It really helps other than just going straight into it.
Yeah, I feel like you often can see the difference when a freestyle pilot has at least some background with pattern or
Yeah,
IMAC or one of those like precision sequences, whether it's indoor or jets, like something that you know that you have to be very precise, put the maneuvers
yeah,
in the
for
right
sure.
position at the right time. And the other big event that you went to pretty recently, right, was the Tucson aerobatic shootout in
Yeah, it was
Arizona.
about almost 2 months ago now, but 6, 7 weeks ago. That was also an incredible experience. It was probably the most eye opener for the like. I hear all the things about people saying about flying in a different air, but you don't realize how different it really is until you go there. It was crazy.
Yeah, can you elaborate on that? What were the main differences you noticed? Because
Yeah, so
it's pretty hot and you are at high elevation, right?
Yeah, so going there, the heat was really hot for us because in the UK the high is usually 20 degrees. So that was one thing, and then the planes. As soon as I took off, you could just feel there was no lift. So everything you did, it was almost like it was in slow motion. Like if you did parachute, you had to come out 10 foot earlier because it sucked you into the ground. And anything slow, even like slow and low Harriers, you had to be super careful, and it definitely took some getting used to.
Yeah, when I competed in the shootout in 2019, I remember I got there just the evening before the first day of competition for freestyle, and I went to some other club nearby, and I only had time to do one flight. I think there was like a thunderstorm coming or something, and I tried to do right away like a practice freestyle routine without just getting kind of any type of like warm up. And I remember feeling extremely discouraged because it felt like completely
Yeah,
different from what I was used to. Like the plane behaved completely different. I remember kind of like coming out of some knife edge spin or something and almost feeling like I didn't have good control of the plane. I think after that,
yeah,
like
for sure.
I got a bit more used to it. But yeah, like the first impression was like pretty different, pretty scary.
Yeah. It took definitely a few, like 2 to 3 flights to be fully confident to know what you need to do and when you need to do it.
Yeah, and on top of it, you were flying with a plane that is not your own plane that you've been doing all the
Yeah,
practice flights at home, right? I guess it was probably a
yeah,
similar model. Um,
yeah. It was the Extreme Flight Extra 260. It was hard to give a fair comparison, but it felt similar characteristics to the two I've got at home, the Extra 300 and the Laser. Just getting around the difference in the air and the
mhm.
difference in power.
So you've now done freestyle competitions in a couple of different countries. Have you noticed like major differences between the flying styles or the way people approach the routines or the way the judges kind of score the flights between different countries, different events?
The biggest difference is in Europe. In Europe, it's more big air, smooth, IMAX style, not IMAX, but you know what I mean, like IMAX style flying, more smooth and precision. Whereas in Tucson and in Israel, it was more smacky, aerobatic, more aerobatics, like hard, aggressive, extreme aerobatics compared to Europe, for sure.
Yeah, it seems like in the US we definitely like it like push the limits of the plane and be as
Yeah,
close to the ground as possible and as aggressive as possible. I think the yes do say effect is still there.
yeah,
And especially I think with the shootout with the new format, right, with the smack flight rounds, that
yeah,
basically is highly encouraging the pilots to kind of like risk things more than they already do in a regular freestyle routine, right?
yeah. I really enjoyed the smack rounds. Just 'cause it's kind of like how you fly at the club, just having some fun, um, getting as low as you can. It was good. I really enjoyed those.
For the 4 minute freestyle routines with the music, you obviously have designed that very carefully and have practiced that particular routine a lot beforehand. For the smack flights, were you kind of doing whatever came to mind, or did you also have like a prepared routine beforehand?
I was just going off of what I thought of at the time. I had the song in mind and I flown to the song at home, but other than that, I was just taking it as if I was flying at the club or doing a demo at like Western Park, for example. It's it was the best way for me in my head to do it because it was going to be fresh every round other than doing the same thing.
Yeah, so basically I was having fun and trying to wow the audience and the judges. I
Yeah.
definitely saw some videos of your flights and it looks like you were doing a pretty good job. I know the scoring you were not super happy with, and that's something that you cannot really control.
Yeah, for
I think
sure.
one of the downsides of this hobby for competitions, especially for freestyle, is that it's pretty subjective sometimes. I know we have like some criteria, but I think when there's a lot of like really good pilots, it's sometimes pretty hard to be extremely objective. But I thought your flights were really good, and the smack flights you're definitely pushing the limits quite a bit.
Thank you. Yeah, I tried my best. It was an awesome week, scores aside, but we'll go back, keep practicing, go back next time and try again.
Yep. Let's talk about the simulator. You mentioned how the sim is an important part for you when you are trying to develop a new freestyle routine.
Yeah.
But I think I've seen you pretty active also on that side of things. Also in the sense of making new planes, right? I know that you have a lot of your designs are up there and people fly them all the time.
Yeah, for sure.
What's your approach with the simulator? How do you go about creating a new model?
Well, I learned how to make them during lockdown because there wasn't much else to do. I always just found it was hard to find one that was what I liked and was flew realistic. So I learned how to make them, obviously 3D modeling the new model from the start, um, to get them perfect for me and realistic. And I started uploading them to the real flight swap pages, and people seemed to love them. And even when I went to Tucson, I had quite a few people say to me, "When am I going to make more?" Because they love flying them, and it was good. It was good to hear that people are enjoying them.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that until recently, I think I was using one of your Pilot RC lasers
Yeah.
from the swap pages. So, are you basically, when you're making a new one from scratch, are you doing the 3D modeling yourself?
Yeah, so you start with the
Wow.
3D modeling, and then you need to map it out for the color scheme, and then you then go to a different modeling software, which this one is Blender, to set the pivots for all the ailerons, elevator, rudder to move in real flight. And then you go over to real flight, put the color scheme on there, and then it starts the work of in the edit menu, trying to get it to fly how you like it, which can take quite some time, but it's definitely worth putting that time in because then you've got a really realistic sort of flying model on the sim.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. I think the default planes that come with real flight are, I would say, okay. They're not the best. They do its job just to start to get you in there flying, but they're not the best. And when you go to the sub pages, I think there's a bit of everything, right? There's a couple of planes that fly extremely well for the simulator. There's many that look beautiful. I think aesthetically they look very close to the real thing, but when you go ahead and fly them, they are nowhere close to the real thing or to
Yeah,
any actual plane, really. And there's a few standouts that, yeah, clearly designer or the person that built it has the flying experience and has put the time into making sure that the physics are as close as possible to the real thing.
yeah, for sure. It's the simulator for me is a really important tool, not even just for freestyle routines, but just learning new maneuvers and things like that. Because especially in the UK, because the weather here is really bad. Like for the last few weeks, it's been crazy winds or raining all the time. We can't get to fly so much, so the simulator, quite a lot of the time, is most of the flying that we do.
Are there any particular parameters that tend to be the most commonly modified by you when you're like trying to get a plane to fly the way you like it in the sim? Do you more or less have a general, okay, these are the 5 or 6 things that I know I usually have to modify? Like, I'm just thinking for people that are trying to tweak a model to behave the way they want it to behave, to behave closer to the real plane.
Yeah.
Is there any like general tips that you can give them?
Yeah, there's a few. So on the simulator, I think a lot of people in the edit menu try and go for like real life parameters, but I just found it doesn't work at all to get it to fly realistic. So just play around with the numbers and like even things like the airfoils, you can change those. Like they're not a visual thing, but on the like the edit model, the physics, you can change the airfoils, the weights of all the different parts. I found even changing the weight of the wings to something that's so unrealistic, it just makes the plane fly so much better. Or the changing the CG to a point where you would never try in real life, it just really helps. Just don't go for looking at like real life parameters. Just play around with the numbers and see how it flies.
Yeah, the simulator is not. that accurate, so you cannot expect the physics to behave the way they would
Yeah,
behave in real life. So you just have to make the numbers um, be whatever needed to make it fly like the real
yeah,
thing.
exactly.
Is there any particular plane that is your go-to these days?
Right now, it's an extra 260. I worked on it after I got back from Tucson. I've done it in the color scheme with the stickers I used there, and I've done an edit for it. They're both on the Real Flight Swap pages. If you go to my page, Rory Tooley, I think it's the latest upload. It'll be the latest one or the one before the latest one.
Yeah,
Or I
I'll make
put a
sure
link
to add a link to
into.
that.
Oh yeah, yeah. Put a link in the description.
When people ask me about simulator and how useful it is and how real it is, I usually tell them that it's pretty, especially when you get a plane that somebody with experience has said that yeah, it's pretty accurate. I think it's pretty good. I think as a tool for training and just to have fun, if you have a rainy day, it helps. I usually tell people that there's like some specific maneuvers that they tend to not do a very good job at replicating. I think things like
Yeah,
crankshafts, maybe knife spins, like all those maneuvers. There's a lot of kind of like you're using the airplane momentum and convert into something else. Don't seem to behave very well in my experience. Is that more or less the same for you? Like, what do you think the
yeah.
sim does well
Knife
and
edge
not so well?
spins, crankshafts. Impossible to get them realistic, no matter what you do. Um, like you say, it's the things that need the momentum of the plane. You just can't get that in the simulator.
Yeah, I feel like they usually either the plane doesn't really wind up properly and it's like doing
Yeah,
like a very tight loop, but it's still not quite the same. Or it's the opposite. It's like you apply elevator and the plane just like completely rotates on its own axis on a very fake manner, right?
yeah, yeah, for
It's
sure.
somewhere in between.
Yeah, it's never going to be 100% realistic, but it's close enough that it's massively helpful.
Yeah, I think in terms of that initial for learning a new maneuver, it will decrease the amount of time you spend with the real plane
Yeah,
by a lot, and it will reduce the potential dangers, right, of making a mistake when you're learning it, and just to build the muscle memory, right, and to do things like build a new routine with or without music. I cannot imagine trying to create a new freestyle routine without the simulator. I think it would take such a long
yeah,
time.
long time and super hard.
Yep. Let's talk about your sponsors. I know that on the past, like, especially in the past, like 2 years, I feel like you've accumulated a long list of like really good brands supporting you, which is awesome. So congrats, first
Yeah,
of all.
thank you.
Do you have any tips on how to go about that for people that are like just getting into competition or just starting to get their name out there? They don't know how to do the next step to get sponsorships. Do you have any advice?
I think the biggest thing is don't just fly to try and get sponsors. Obviously, it's a great thing to have, and it's super helpful. It's just nice to be recognized by companies. But if you get into the thing of just flying for sponsors, like just trying to get them, you start to lose the fun side of things. I would say if keep active on social media, that's the biggest thing is social media, keeping active, making videos, making posts, just flying videos or posts about your setup, anything like that. And over time, people will start to see you, share your posts, and then companies will recognize you. And basically, let it come to you. Don't chase it, sort of thing, like that. That makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. I think my experience is very similar, and I think what your point of don't focus too much on it.
Yeah,
I think it's pretty important. I think for good or bad, RC flying is not a huge sport, right? It's not like Formula One with millions of dollars moving around. So I think pretty much nobody's gonna make a ton of money with this. So the most important thing is for you to have fun. As
yeah,
long as soon as things stop being fun, Then it doesn't matter how many sponsors or how many events you win. It's kind of pointless at the end.
Yeah, exactly.
You were mentioning your plane at the shootout. It was this extra 260 from Extreme Flight, right? I know that 120cc is probably like the most common kind of size for freestyle, and especially for competitions. And I'm guessing that that's your most common airframe at home too. So can you talk a bit about what the typical setup in terms of gear is for your 120cc planes?
Yeah, so for me, I run a GP123 engine in all of my 120cc models. And I use the Powerbox system equipment. So I have the Powerbox Competition SR2, which I have in all my models. And I also took to Tucson to put in the extra 260. It just really helps simplify things like servo matching because it has the new auto matching feature. So you just click a button and it does it all for you, keeps it
Is
super
that fully
simple.
automatic? So just set the mechanical side of
Yeah,
things
so
as close as
you
possible, click the button,
Yeah,
and
you get it close on the control rods and the centering your servos. You hit a button and it goes through like hundreds of points on each side of the ailerons, up and down. Then it measures the voltage for the each servo to see where it's pulling more, see where it's stressing it, and it sets it up perfectly every time.
that's really nice.
And then for servos, I'm using McGregor servos, the 55 kilo ones. They've been great for me, really good servos, never had any issues. Um, And then for smoke, which I always get quite a lot of questions about my smoke system, I use the Powerbox smoke pump. And the oil I use is called MT smoke oil. It's a UK branded smoke oil. Um, all with the gear I use to pipe the smoke pump is all that comes with the Powerbox pump. So keeping it super simple. And I found that setup is awesome. It looks great at competitions and shows and events. It works really well.
What about propeller for that GP engine?
Oh yes, I use the Falcon 28.9.5, which I have on the Extra, and then on the Laser, I have the 2810. Not any particular reason, it's just the two I had. Um, so I went for that.
And what about batteries for powering the power box?
I use the Genzace 2-cell 3200 milliamp batteries. Two of those. I don't run an ignition battery, just run it through the power box. The same with the smoke, just power that through the power box also, keeping the setup nice and light.
Cool. Can you talk about how you go regarding the setup of the radio? So, did you use dual rates? What type of expos did you run?
Yeah, so it's super simple. I just go 55% expo as a starting point. Um, I'll maybe change that 5-10% after flying the plane, but usually it stays around 50 to 55. And then I go for maximum deflection I can get on the tail. It's usually around 55-60 degrees on the elevator, up and down, and then rudder. Don't usually measure it. I just look at it and make sure it looks. It's hard to measure the rudder being
It's
vertical.
hard to measure the rudder.
Yeah. And then I don't use any aileron differential either. I just go 38 degrees up and down both sides. And then for dual rates, I don't run any rate, just maximum the whole time. I found that was works the best for me. Other people might prefer having a switch for smoother flying, flick to lower rates, but for me, I just found just altering the stick movement just is best for me.
What about the center of gravity? Where do you like it?
I like quite a tail heavy plane. Uh, I usually always go for batteries like on the back servo tray in the fuselage. Like you'll know for the Pilot RC laser, you have the servo tray at the back. It's the same in extreme flight models. I always go batteries there, and I find that helps get the CG where I want it all the time. I tried it in the extra 260 because I copied the setup from the other team guys. I had them next to the fuel tanks, the batteries, but I just found it was a little bit too nose heavy for me, so I went straight on the back servo tray again, and it's felt perfect.
Interesting. When you say you like it tail heavy, I know it's very hard to describe, but let's say when you are on inverted flight, are you applying any elevator? Is it pretty hands off?
Inverted, it's hands off. Level
Okay.
flying, probably the tiniest bit to keep it down, but not crazy tail heavy, but slightly more
Slightly tail
than
heavy, yeah.
recommended CG. Yeah.
Did you find it helping in 3D maneuvers like crankshafts, but maybe um, kind of compromising, or is there a trade-off between the 3D performance and the precision side when you're bringing the CG a little bit back, or not much?
It's not so much. You have to definitely be more careful on the tail movements when doing slow stuff like one roll circuit, for example. If I was flying an IMAX sequence, I would move the CG further forward because it's just for the smooth precision flying. But for the all-round freestyle competitions or demo flights, it's you don't. It's not so much of a difference in the smooth flying and like the lines. So I've just found it's much better for my style. But of course, always depends on personal preference.
Definitely. The other thing I wanted to ask you is about this kind of custom painted pilots I've seen in your Facebook
Yeah.
page. Is that something that you're making yourself?
Yeah, so I make them similar to the real flight models. I 3D modeled the pilot head, I 3D print them, and then I obviously primer them up and then paint them by hand, custom to match people's planes. I I saw something similar somewhere and I thought I'll give that a go. And I just one of my models and I posted a picture on Facebook and people were asking where can I buy them and stuff. So I just started making them for a few people and they were really popular. It really surprised me.
Yeah, I saw a couple of them. I remember like a was it an Ayrton Senna helmet maybe inspired
Yeah,
pilot?
yeah.
They
F1
look
to
really
match
good.
his F1 helmet. Yeah,
Yeah, those are really cool. And yeah, I think I remember some brand. I forget the name, but many years ago they used to have like some cool designs too. But I think these days it's pretty hard to find interesting pilot figures for RC models. Um, is this something that people can get from you?
yeah. You just if you would like one, just send me a message on Facebook, Instagram, and I can sort one out for you for sure.
Cool. I'm sure a bunch of people will reach out. Uh, Based on the pictures, it looks really good.
Thank you.
Do you have a general idea of their weight for, let's say, for like a 120cc plane, for example?
The one for a 120cc, it weighs about 100 grams, 1 to 120 grams. Obviously, it varies a little bit depending on how much paint's on there, but 1 to 120 is about the weight I've been getting on them.
Yeah, that sounds pretty light. That sounds that you wouldn't be able to really notice it, especially that's
Yeah,
usually pretty close to the CG, anyways.
it's about the same weight as I think it's a tiny bit heavier than the weight of like the pilots that come in extreme flight models.
Cool. Well, pretty busy 2024. What are your plans for next year? Do you have an idea of what big events are you hitting up?
Yeah, so first will be Joe Knoll again this next year. Loved it this year, so gonna make it happen again. Um, Competitions, still waiting on some confirmation dates for some. Um, but I see that we have EXFC happening, so I'll be looking at going to that for sure. Um, and then Western Park, of course, in the UK. Um, yeah, I see, there's possibly going to be a competition in Dubai in December as well by Manrico, who's an IMAC judge. So that would be cool. We'll go to that for sure. There's a few other things that possibly happening, but waiting on confirmation. Yeah, it'll be another good year for traveling around for sure.
Nice, exciting. I most likely will see you at Jonal then.
Yeah, that'd be good to see you again.
And one thing I just recently found out when I was preparing for an interview is so that you seem to also be into RC cars, even competing in RC cars.
Yeah, I race RC cars quite a lot, especially throughout the winter times when we can't fly so much. Indoors on carpet, 1/10 scale off-road buggies. It's good fun. I got into that as well through my dad because he used to race them as a kid, and he still races now because they do some vintage classes where they'll, as you see some behind, where they race the cars from like 80s, 90s, what he used to race when he was a kid.
Is that similar level of popularity than airplanes in the UK?
In the UK, cars is huge.
Oh,
It's
really?
massive, much bigger than flying. You'll go to
Hmm.
a race meeting and there'll be a few hundred people there. Um, but obviously that's also, there's more people who entered but didn't get in. So it's very popular here.
Do you feel like any of the skills from airplanes translate into cars or the other way around? Or completely
I
different
think it
skill sets?
definitely helped me because I got used to the car racing pretty quickly.
Hmm.
Because I'm using the stick controller as well, other than the steering wheel. But yeah, obviously it's totally different, but I think just having the hand-eye coordination from the planes helped straight away with the cars.
Nice. Um, you mentioned before how pretty much since the beginning you've been mainly interested in aerobatics. Have you ever done any jet flying?
I haven't, unfortunately. I would really love to, especially vectored thrust flying. I see I see lots of videos, and it's something I definitely want to do one day. It's just super expensive to get into a big vectored thrust jet. That's the probably the biggest thing. And also it's hard to be good at, but lots of things like to be really good at vectored thrust jet flying as well as going around competing at competitions. Just kind of focusing on mainly freestyle for now.
Yeah, makes sense. You can only put enough time to so many things, especially
For sure.
when you want to get really good at it. Cool. Well, I think I'm gonna let you go. Make sure you get some sleep. But hey, thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me on.
And yeah, let's let's chat a bit more at Nall next year.
Yeah, see you there.
Bye, Ray.
See ya.